Alright, y'all. Welcome to Slim and Semm. It's me, Dark Slim, your boy. Gonna talk about X-Men 97, Season 2, Episode 5. Was just aired this last Wednesday. And it was a very high action, high adrenaline, in your face, 80s type of movie homage with the genre, in the action genre. This episode had a lot going on in a very compressed amount of time. But as you can see in the background, these are the characters it was focusing on. I'll talk about them in a second. It was very much a departure from last week's episode, where we had the very violent rise to power for Ensa Banur, aka Apocalypse, and the loss of a lot of fans' favorite anti-hero, villain, whatever you want to call him, Magneto, in the face of a very helpless Charles Xavier. The memes were giving me life that people were posting, especially shout out on Threads. Like, I found myself going to Threads because people were posting just hilarious memes and screenshots of that last episode. I mean, you either laugh or you cry, right? Because Apocalypse does not play. He does not play when it comes to his whole philosophy of survival of the absolute fittest. And so, just checking for sound. All right. And so, doing something a little different here. Did a little slideshow with my screen caps. See if this flows a little better. But yeah, this is the team that gets put together in the post-credit scene of last week's episode. Wolverine meets up with Captain America and Black Widow. They give him a file for Weapon X, and we kind of knew what it was for. He was going to try to find a way to get his adamantium back, and he said he's going to put the whole band back together. Well, that meant he cashed in whatever favors he had left with fellow members of the Weapon X or Team X that he used to run with, and that included Sabretooth and Lady Deathstrike, two characters that in the old X-Men animated series definitely were coming for Wolverine's neck. Definitely were looking to make him go through as much pain, suffering, and sorrow as they could possibly compromise him into being. But this time, Wolverine kind of flipped the script on them, and he brought Morph along for this mission where he tells the team, "Hey, we're gonna go and find the doctor that did this to us and put a stop to Weapon X." And I guess that was enough. The promise of vengeance, that was enough to get these mercenaries, these very bloodthirsty characters in the in the Marvel universe. Lady Deathstrike, I mean, her name, it's in the name, right? Deathstrike, Sabretooth, I mean, we know he's a piece of trash. What's the matter, punk? Can't take care of your woman. I mean, that's a line from a Saturday morning cartoon show. While homeboy dips his claw into some cake frosting that was supposed to be for Logan and his lady. And yeah, like, Sabretooth is sick. Now Maverick, his name is Maverick, but he's one of the real ones. He'll go into these missions, and he's good with reconnaissance because of the upgrades on his suit. Maverick is the character all the way on the right hand side of the image with the gun. I mean, he's no Cable, but he's a capable fighter. If you're gonna be in a facility of some kind, like the writers of this episode knew. They knew that this was gonna be an episode that had a lot of explosions and close quarter combat with, well, I'll show you. If you didn't watch the episode, I don't know what the hell you're doing here, because this is just straight spoilers. But and my take on what happened. But basically, they wrote this episode very much as an homage to like the Aliens, Alien, that type of action movie from the past where you get a group together have them fly into a mission that they think is going to go one way and immediately goes another. And before you can even, move on from Magneto, he's giving us that look like, damn, y'all already forgot about me, man? Yeah, we kind of did. So Wolverine and his team are flying into this base, this secluded base, based on the intel gathered from Cap and Black Widow, as I mentioned before. And Wolverine sells this team a lie. He tells them, "Hey, we're gonna go to this facility, and we're gonna find that doctor, the doctor that put us all through this stuff, all them scientists that experimented on us and made us become killing machines. We're gonna go in there, we're gonna handle this." And I guess they were down, and Morph was flying them in, and everything's cool, But we should have known something was up when Logan was giving looks like this, these furtive looks. We should have known something was up. Did I crop? I think that might be. I hope that's an elbow on the left side. I think that's Black Widow's elbow. I don't think it's a boob. But anyway, that's Cap's boob for sure. We should have known Logan was having ulterior motives when he was giving these kind of looks, all hunched over, grabbing these files on the rooftops with these covert Avengers, as covert as the Stars and Stripes can make you, as Wolverine joked when he saw Steve after 50 years. But old Bone Claws over here, we should have known something was up. Now, the team that he put together, all right, these are all the members of the team in a very dynamic shot. A shot that was only done for promotional purposes because in the episode, not everybody even lasts to get into the facility from the plane, from the aircraft that they flew into the compound with. Cut off on the side, but I make up for it, with the profile pic that I'm using for this episode. Lady Deathstrike on the left. You got Maverick with a double long clip gun on. I don't know what that is, but it's cool as hell. Very 90s. A lot of pouches and shoulder pads. No feet showing. Very Rob Liefeld. Speaking of Rob Liefeld, you got Morph in the background in the Spider-Man type of pose, but half Deadpool Morph, changing into, transforming into. Sabretooth, of course, always with that bloodthirsty smile, claws out, just ready to crash out if the opportunity arises, and if there isn't an opportunity, he'll create one. And then you got this guy in the bottom right who dies on impact. He's telling stories like the old war veteran that he is of different missions he's been on and all this stuff. Your man Kane, he meets his demise because the Brood attack. I said it. The Brood, a flock of mutated birds, attack the helicopter on its way into the compound, and they crash land. Morph is a little dazed. He was flying the helicopter. He was flying them in there, and he wakes up and he's wondering, wait, where is everybody? And for those of us that know very well this group of mutants, we're expecting them to be pretty much fine. Wolverine and Sabretooth have crazy healing factors. Lady Deathstrike is very durable. I mean, she has adamantium hands for claws. Those could sustain an impact if she needed to. Maverick, he's wily. He's a mission leader. He has really good recon abilities, and like I mentioned before, his armor, the equipment that he brings to a facility, he could basically UAV map out the blue screen, the blueprints and the schematics of wherever he's at, making him an ideal operative for these type of missions. But old Kane gets split in half by a tree trunk. He landed abdomen first into a tree, and he gets got, immediately telling you, hey, stakes are high here, like bad things are going to happen. This is not a safe mission. But, Wolverine and Lady Deathstrike, Sabretooth, Maverick, and Morph, they're able to make, they're safe off of that crash landing. and pretty much the cover's blown. But they realize something's wrong because, like I mentioned, those 10 minutes in, fuck cancer. They realize that the flock of birds that was flying into the chopper, they see some corpses of it, and they also encounter like a mutated polar bear where Morph transforms into Sasquatch from Alpha Flight. Morph in this episode, we know he's the cameo king. In this episode, man, he has more transformations than any other previous episode. Probably as much as all the episodes combined in this one mission. And in this case, he turns into Sasquatch as he's trying to reunite with the team after the crash, and a polar bear attacks them. A polar bear that has obvious, physiological mutations. Something's wrong with this polar bear's snout, mouth, and hide. And, they don't know it at the time, but it's because that polar bear has been infected by the brood. Now, for those that don't know what the brood are these, basically they look very xenomorph-ish. It's as close to a copyright lawsuit as you can get with Marvel. They're this alien species that have a hive mind. There's usually a queen that runs stuff, and they very similar to the xenomorphs from aliens. They can impregnate you and overtake your body, and then you become part of the hive mind. But the interesting thing about the brood is when they take you over, like, you kind of maintain your abilities to some extent. So if they're able to, let's say hypothetically, they're able to take over like Wolverine, it'll be he won't look like them. You know what I mean? In the sense that he'll have wings and insect-like features. No, he'll have his body, but he'll grow fangs like them, and he'll maintain his claws. Does he maintain the healing factor? I think so. I think he's able to do that as well. But the brood are vicious. They overwhelm you with their numbers, and because they're a hive mind, they can be very formidable to go up against. And when you have such a coordinated enemy like the brood going up against the ragtag group, that Wolverine put together with a bunch of hotheads and crash outs, it's a recipe for entertainment, but also disaster. So the team gets to the facility. They realize something is wrong. Walls are all broken in. And when they get there, they realize that, oh shit, everybody seems to be dead here. We ain't come here for this. And these alien broods start attacking. Wolverine, starts doing what he can to take them out. And Morph turns into Thing. And, Benjamin Grimm from Yancey Street does a cool maneuver. He turns into Puck as well from Alpha Flight. I mean, he's turning into all types of people here. But he turns into Thing, takes out a bunch of them, and the team's trying to figure out how they can get out of this facility. And they're like, whoa, we came here to kill that doctor. So let's split up. I'll go this way, Wolverine says, and y'all go that way. Wolverine tells them that he's going to go find transportation because he's like, hey, forget about the mission. We got to get out of here. How we going to get out of here? Oh, and I kind of messed up. They do find the doctor. They do find him, but he is possessed by the brood, transforms in front of them, and then they realize, all right, the vengeance we came here to get, nature did it. You know what I mean? Like, this alien invasion did it. We ain't even going to get to kill these guys. They're all dead. So Wolverine says, hey, let's split up. I'll go to the hangar bay or whatever he says, and I'll secure us a way out of here, and you guys go over there and you try to turn the power back on, because we got to turn the power back on to be able to open up the hangar doors to leave this place. So as they explore the facility and try to find where to go. Hold on, give me 1 second, because I think I might have put some slides out of order. Did I do that? I think I did, but it's all right. I'll figure it out. All right. So as they get to this facility or whatever, as they're walking around, they do encounter in like this tube, and it's very interesting. The coloring of the tube that they find Omega Red in, a fan favorite. I say he's a fan favorite because I'm a fan and he's one of my favorites. He's not the deepest character, you know. He's a comrade through and through, but he's just a killing machine that just hates everybody and everything. He's a carbonadium laced zombie who leeches life from people. And he does it while rocking the Omega headband. But the coloring of the I don't know what you call this tube that they find him in. It's very reminiscent of the tubes where the super soldiers were in Captain America Civil War. That was pointed out by a couple of YouTubers, like YouTube channels like Screen Crush, and they pointed out that the coloring, it looks very similar to where those super soldiers that were in that hidden base in the Arctic that Zemo ends up shooting and killing because he's very anti-super soldier. It had like an amber orange color to it. So it's interesting that this Weapon X facility, this is where they're holding Omega Red. So as they're exploring and they stumble across this tube, which, you know, they will not disturb if they can help it, that's when they discover that something's wrong. Something's wrong to the effect that Wolverine gets infected by the Brood. And Wolverine starts wilding out. And in the process of wilding out, he crashes and cracks open the freaking stasis chamber, whatever, where they had Omega Red, and now they got to deal with Omega Red and the Brood. So the team that split off of Morph and Lady Deathstrike and Sabretooth, they run. You know, this is the team right here. They run and they find this room. It's still dark because they haven't been able to put the power back on. And who puts the power back on? Tech Bro Sabretooth. Who knew that in his long life, Sabretooth had a side hobby where he kept up with tech? If you need a pre-built, if you need to build a PC, who knew that, yeah, you could call Forge, but if you're feeling a little edgy and you want to save some money and put your life on the line, call Sabretooth. You know, Mr. Creed will come to your house and he'll build you one because he's a tech bro. And Lady Deathstrike and Morph are surprised by his technological know-how to, you know, put the wires together and get the power back on in the facility. But he tells him, he says, hey, you don't live as long as I have without knowing, hey, you got to keep up with technology. You got to keep up. So is he a crypto boy? I don't know. I definitely know you don't want to try to digitally swindle Victor Creed here, because he's not the type to take getting played lightly. But speaking of lightly, he turns the lights on. And when he turns the lights on, Morph and Lady Deathstrike see a bunch of these DVDs, these discs labeled with all types of names of Easter eggs, of Weapon X program people and stuff. And they pop one in and they start seeing how the folks at the facility were experimenting with this alien species, this Brood, and trying to utilize the hive mind that the Brood used to communicate and operate. They wanted to try to incorporate that in the super soldiers that they were creating in the Weapon X program. And that backfired, obviously. And it didn't work. It ended up not working. And when they see that, Morph realizes, and I think they all start to realize, that Logan brought them here not for revenge. You know, Logan went there and said, hey, I'm going to go off and find vehicles, whatever. All that ended up being a lie once they realized the layout of the facility. And they realized that Wolverine brought them there for the sole purpose of trying to find the same machine that put the adamantium into his system, into his, that laced his skeleton with the same adamantium that was ripped out from his body last season by Magneto in that Fatal Attraction moment, they realized that Wolverine just lured them all there for the excuse of him trying to get his adamantium back. You know, that traumatizing process that he went through back in the day, he wanted to do it again. He wanted to run it back because he wasn't feeling like his old self with them bone claws. And so when they realized that, and their old boy Wolverine, you know, he's freaking transformed and been inhabited by the Brood, they remember, Morph remembers that in the past, when the Brood tried to attach itself to Wolverine, it wasn't able to, and it was probably because of the adamantium. So Morph tries to convince Sabretooth and Lady Deathstrike, like, hey, if we could get Wolverine back into the tube and get the adamantium in him, if we could lure him, then maybe he could fight the Brood infestation in his body, get him back to his old self, and then we could get him up on out of here. And they're looking at him like, are you crazy? You know, they're looking at him, are you stupid? And, you know, he another transformation for Morph, he turns into Silver Samurai, starts swinging at Sabretooth, and, you know, Sabretooth is able to subdue him because even though Morph can imitate the physical abilities of the other mutants and characters that he's turned into throughout this series, is a limit. Like, even though he's Silver Samurai and swinging a sword, when he tries to stab at Sabretooth's head, the sword hits the wall, and we see that the sword kind of like liquefies, like it loses its density, its properties, and stuff like that. He's not the real deal Holyfield. He can imitate the physical abilities to an extent, but the objects that the characters that he's turning into wield, you know, they're not as durable as the actual weapons and stuff like that. So Sabretooth subdues him, and, you know, but Lady Deathstrike tries to talk some sense into Morph. You know, she tries to tell him how, you know, I know you're loyal to your boy, and you remind me of this Japanese fairy tale, this folk tale, about this fox, this kitsune, that was able to change its shape, and it would do that to try to deceive the enemies of the fox's friend, this roaming samurai. And she was trying to tell Morph that you remind me of that story. Like, the samurai you following around is your boy Logan, and you change shape and you do whatever you can. You even step up to killers like me and Sabretooth, you know, turning into fellow countrymen because Yuriko, I think she's Japanese, Lady Deathstrike, you know, even turning into fellow countrymen enemies, and all this for Wolverine, who brought you here too. He brought you here too. He lied to you too. But Morph is loyal, man. Morph is loyal as hell. So he's like, nah, I gotta try. I got to try. And so what Morph does is he says, look, I'll turn into, I know how to do this. I'll lure Logan into that vat. Y'all just push the buttons and turn it on so he can get the adamantium in him, and then we could book it out of here. And Morph's idea is hilarious because he decides to turn into none other than Cyclops. And Cyclops starts talking all this mess to Wolverine and talking about how, oh, you want me to tell Jean how you've been misbehaving? You know, he tells all these jokes, and it's a really fun moment. You can tell that the voice actor for the guy who plays Cyclops, you could tell that he had fun with this silly moment, and that facial expression right there is just very unlike our Scott Summers. But Morph is successful. Morph is successful in trying to lure Wolverine. Omega Red shows up. More Brood show up. Morph even turns into Spider-Man, into Peter Parker himself, flipping and dodging as best as he can to buy time for Logan in the process to put the adamantium back in him in the tube. He tries his best to avoid getting caught up in the fire, the flames, the explosions, because Omega Red, the Brood can't touch him. He's his body is like impenetrable, and he's dead. So like they can't really take him over. So he's just swatting them left, right, and off his body and into barrels, and that causes explosions. That's why you see the flames around Spider-Man, but that's not really Spider-Man. That's Morph. But eventually he gets caught, and Omega Red hits him with the life draining ability that he has, and Morph is almost down for the count. But then the process completes, and Wolverine, this is from the trailer, he says, "I'm back, baby," and the pose he has here is very reminiscent of the Frank Miller cover of Wolverine #1, where he's basically saying, "Come hither, bub," with his adamantium claws shining. And a lot of people speculated, myself included, that the green blood that we saw on his claws was probably from Brood, because they had shown a moment in the early trailers for season 2 of Morph turning into Deadpool, while the Brood were, like in a fighting stance in front of him. And that's exactly what this was. Wolverine gets his adamantium claws back and starts slicing up some Brood. And because the adamantium is back in the system, I guess the Brood are not able to resist it. The whatever DNA, however they cross, mingle, and become symbiotic to a host, the adamantium repels them for some reason. So the facility's burning down. Sabretooth and Lady Deathstrike and Morph and now Wolverine, they're trying to run out the facility. They find a jet of some kind, and in 80s action movie style, they leave the place as it starts to explode, and our heroes survive. But it's not that simple. It's definitely not that simple, because on the flight, Morph and Wolverine have a little bit of a heart-to-heart, and Morph feels betrayed. Morph feels like he was lied to, because he was. And when he basically asks Wolverine, like, "Yo, you cool with being this ruthless and this heartless? You cool with risking all our lives just so you could get your adamantium back? The same adamantium that's caused you so much pain, like that's what made you a weapon that people used. You know what I mean? Like, you went back and got that?" And Wolverine just basically tells him, like, "Look, man, you could change into whoever, whenever you want. I've been around for 200 years, my boy. And you know what doesn't happen? You know what I can't do? Is change." Which is bullshit, because Wolverine has changed. But he basically tells Morph, like, this is who I am. Like, yeah, you right. They laced me with the weapons, with the adamantium to make me a weapon, and they messed with my memories and all this shit. But you know what? That's who I am. And Morph, who was also weaponized, who was also, physically tortured by Mr. Sinister and all that, psychologically tortured and all that, Morph can't really wrap his head or understand why Wolverine would choose that. Like, why would you choose that again? And why would you do that even at the expense of me? I love you, bro. Like, I think Morph loves Wolverine more than like a friend. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think they've hinted at that plenty times. Even in this episode, Wolverine stabs Morph when Morph's trying to lure him, because the Cyclops ruse only works for so long. And then after getting stabbed, Morph turns into Jean, and that kind of snaps Logan out of it a little bit and allows Deathstrike to jump from behind and flip Wolverine into the vat, close the door on him, and then start the adamantium process. But Morph can't even sit next to this dude after he hears Wolverine's response. And the episode ends basically with Morph looking back at his friend who he trusted, loves, but Morph is not in that broken of a place where he would devalue what it means to love yourself. You know, like he was used as a tool, as a puppet to lure his friends into danger, and he had to overcome that, and that was very traumatic for Morph to basically experience near death and then be used as a sleeper agent by Mr. Sinister. Morph would never choose to do that again, even if there were benefits. He wouldn't choose that because he cares about other people more. But he's looking back at his friend, who, while Wolverine basically looks at himself through the reflection of his claws, because that's who Wolverine thinks he is. It was a very good episode. Like, it was very fast paced, and I said in the beginning of the summary, like, it was very fast paced, and there were a lot of like action sequences and things like that took place throughout the episode. But the thing is that it was really a palate cleanser. It was a palate cleanser for, you know, what took place last episode with Apocalypse coming into power and killing Magneto in such a brutal fashion. And so, you know, I think that it was kind of necessary. It reminded me a little bit of the episode that followed last season's Remember It. You know, we kind of needed a little bit of a, not a slowdown, but time to breathe. You know, so the episode gets Wolverine's claws back, which is cool. It doesn't really move much of the plot forward, but maybe they could come back to it in some way. And here's where I'm thinking about the future and where the episodes, where things might go. That theme of like choosing pain and choosing trauma because that's what you're comfortable with, or choosing to be used by someone else, and why that's probably not always the best, why that's not the best choice. Because Apocalypse chose to be a tool of the Celestials. The Celestials invited him to be their instrument to both push the evolutionary momentum along for the human race and their experiments that they have on Earth with us as a species, with humans as a species. They invited Apocalypse to be an instrument for them to push evolution along, but also to be the last thing standing to close out their experiment, to be the shore that the waves crash upon, to be the last thing, the Apocalypse. He chose that. Like, he talks about how he was a slave that became a god, but yo, you became a god under management because you work for the Celestials. Wolverine, not of his own accord necessarily, was taken and turned into a weapon. And even though it was brutal, Magneto kind of freed him from some of that. And he chose to do it again. And not only did he choose to do it again, he put the lives of other people on the line, including Morphs, to get that, to accomplish that. That's cold. That's cold. And I say that this might be a theme going forward because when Gambit comes back as Death, Gambit died thinking that Rogue had chose Magneto. Not really knowing that Rogue, after the dance and the kiss and all that, realized, I do have feelings for Remy. Realized it a little bit too fucking late, but realized that. And Remy doesn't know that. So Remy died. Gambit died thinking Rogue chose Magneto over me. And when Apocalypse, raises him up and gives him power, it's going to be hard to convince him to fight against it the way that Archangel did, to resist Apocalypse's influence. It's going to be hard for Remy to do that when he has that notion in the back of his mind. So will he continue to choose to work under Apocalypse for the power and to get some of that anger and vengeance out? Or will he fight against it? Because in the comic books, Gambit comes up with a plot to trick Apocalypse. So he goes to Apocalypse and says, "Oh, I'll be your horseman," with blah. but it's all a ruse, and so he's going into that with the whole intention of betraying Apocalypse. That's not what's happening in the cartoon. That's not what's happening in X-Men 97. So we're gonna see how that unfolds. I think that's gonna be a theme. I think that even Charles, with my Onslaught theories, I think that Charles himself is gonna have a revelation, where there's the opportunity for Onslaught to come about. Basically, he's not gonna fully understand what that means, but the hatred, the pain, the trauma, everything that I believe he downloaded from Magneto, along with his own stuff, which is what basically stirs the pot and all the ingredients to make Onslaught in the comics. I think that Charles is going to have a moment of weakness and choose to become a slave or subservient to that pain, to unleash Onslaught. I think that's the theme, or one of the major themes going on, like basically choosing to be subservient. That Majin Vegeta thing from Dragon Ball, are you a slave if you get what you want? He goes to Bobby D, he goes to them for that extra power to be stronger than Goku or whatever, to get that power jump. But he does it because it aligns with his own goal, no matter how twisted it is, and no matter what it costs. So I think that that's part of the themes of what's going on with this season. But anyway, that's what I think. If you were listening to me rant for all this time, appreciate you. If you have any theories or anything like that, let me know. Thanks for watching if you did. If you enjoyed my take on episode 5 of season 2 of X-Men 97, share it with somebody. Or just hit me up and let me know. Because that's encouraging. So I appreciate it. Don't know if we got any viewers today. But I know it was last minute because yesterday I went to the movies to see The Odyssey. And I'll talk about that in the future. Either here on my YouTube channel or on someplace else, which, is exciting, and we'll talk about that at a later date. But if you were listening, appreciate you. If you want to give some feedback on the slideshows, is that helpful for visualizing some of the stuff we're talking about? That'd be nice feedback to know. I know the production's not that great. Got to work on that. But anyway, appreciate you listening, watching. Love X-Men. Hopefully that came across to y'all. Hopefully I added something to your interest or love for X-Men. And I'll catch you in the next episode. Again, thank you for watching. And y'all be safe.